Okay, so you also recently made a video about Dave Rubin. Now, you were a fan of Dave Rubin, as you said, for a while, but he made this whole classical liberal jump.
Mhm.
What do you kind of make of his change? And also, you talked about how he's like kind of this kind of fake free speech, advocate or absolutist. You know, what do you make of his change to classical liberalism?
Um, just my personal opinion, I think it was completely for money.
Hmm.
Uh, he left the Young Turks supposedly because he wasn't being paid enough money. I don't know if that's true, but I heard that from a number of people. Um, but I mean, even if that's not true, he hasn't really. I don't know why he's done what he's done. I mean, there's no other rational explanation because for years he was he appeared to be a progressive person
Yeah.
on the policy, but sometimes, I mean, if you're living in California, it's expensive to live in California, and
Yes, it is.
you need some money, and you're not getting the money you want from where you're working, and you see an opportunity to move out. And look, when Dave Rubin first left TYT, there was no drama about it.
Yeah, there
It was
wasn't.
just like, oh, they had this amicable split, like whatever. He's doing his own thing. He started his own show. I think he even had Jimmy Dore on his new
Yeah, he did.
independent show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did.
So it was just, and then he made this eventual turn to the right, and then he started hanging out with like Ben Shapiro,
Yeah.
and I think he was just on Greg Gutfeld's show, who was a former
Oh,
Fox News anchor.
yeah,
So
he's
it's
a
just this,
loser.
yeah, it's and if you want to do all that, then whatever. But don't be so. It's so disingenuous because
Right.
he tries to be this free speech guy. But I laid down in my video. I mean, the biggest one for me, he didn't cover Chelsea Manning getting kicked out of Harvard as a visiting fellow, and that was while he was giving a talk. Like the same day that story came out, he had a talk scheduled at Harvard, and maybe that's the reason he didn't want to say anything about it. He didn't want to upset Harvard, but to not cover that, you really are ignoring issue or free speech issues when it comes to one political perspective, which he claims to not do, or he claims to not be a good thing to do.
Right.
So I don't know. It's sad in some way because here's a guy who could have been a strong voice in the progressive movement, once was in many ways, and made this turn for whatever his reason was. I don't know, but it's uh, the whole point of that video wasn't really to take Dave Rubin down. It was to just educate people.
Hmm.
Like if you're a Dave Rubin viewer, I just want you to understand that you may not actually be on his side politically. He acts like he's a free speech guy and a neutral guy, but in reality, he's not. And if he was just out there and said, "Look, I'm a right wing guy. I believe in right wing policy," and that was his thing, then cool, do whatever you want. But don't pretend to be neutral. That's my problem. Don't pretend to be something you are not.
Yeah. So when it have you seen the David Pakman interview with Dave Rubin?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So that really kind of showed me how Dave doesn't really know all that much about policy or what he ascribes himself to, which is classical liberalism. Um,
Yeah.
if you saw that, there were things where he says he supports single payer healthcare, and then Packman says, well, that's completely opposed to classical liberalism because you're bringing the government into it, and
Yeah.
then he describes that he supports Obamacare, not actually single payer. So it's kind of all over the place. So I kind of see what you mean on that,
This is
but
why I think it comes from a disingenuous position
yeah,
because he can't properly explain it. So
right,
because I think in his heart he does believe in single payer healthcare,
yeah.
and he does believe in equal rights and equal protections, and he is getting paid to not do that. At least that's my feeling. I don't have
Right.
the proof on that. That's just my subjective opinion on how I view Dave Rubin.